In this exciting episode, Perry's love life gets enough illumination so we can tell how much we can't see. Let's just say it's lost. It's in the title, right? It's the 1987 made-for-TV movie Perry Mason, The Case of the Lost Love. Welcome to the Perry Pod. I'm your humble host, Jonathan Searcy. My purpose here is pretty simple: provide an audio companion to the greatest legal drama in television history, Perry Mason. I plan to do a pod for every episode of the television series, and in episodes like this one, I'll take a look at some of those made-for-TV movies too. Each episode, I give a brief refresher of the plot, list some key pieces of trivia, and tackle the episode or movie's main theme. Then I feature a Perry Proverb, a moment of wisdom from the man himself, and finish with a post-case water cooler where, just like Perry, Della, and Paul, we can rehash the ins and outs of their adventures. But first, to the law library. Each episode in the Law Library, we return to prior cases to refresh our memories about Perry's past so we can find fresh precedents for future cases. In this episode's visit to the Law Library, we check out the ins and outs of bail hearings. I can't remember a bail hearing off the top of my head in an Earl Stanley Gardner novel, certainly not in the show. We generally cut straight to the trial. Intriguingly, in this movie, we get a debate between the prosecution and defense about bail, centering around the defendant's roots in the community.
The defendant is an extremely wealthy man. Not only does he own a home here, he also maintains an apartment in the city of New York and a house just outside Zurich, Switzerland. This indicates not only that he has few real roots here, it also suggests that fleeing the jurisdiction of this court is well within his means. Therefore, to ensure the defendant's appearance in this court, the state urges that bail be denied.
Mr. Mason, I think some bail is appropriate here. Bail is set in the amount of $200,000.
That's a pretty stiff bail price for 1987, over $500,000 in today's buying power. Two notes. One, obviously Perry's reputation hasn't reached Denver, Colorado, the setting for this particular movie. If Perry's your lawyer, you're not going to go on the lam. The dude's going to get you acquitted. That's just what he does. So there's never really an issue with Perry's clients fleeing. And number two, the prosecution is making a case about roots in the community when he's a special deputy prosecutor from who knows where. Is he from California, from New York? I'm not really sure. He's running the case seriously? Goodness, he's not from Denver. Hypocrite, thou art David Ogden Steers. Now, let's get to the plot of this movie. The Case of the Lost Love. Laura Robertson is a lawyer with a promising political future. A Colorado senator has died. She's about to get his seat. Ka-ching!
Listen, a toast to Laura. May she go from senior partner in our firm to junior senator.
But not all is rosy. Her husband, Glenn, gets a blackmail call just as Laura is celebrating. It seems Laura has a past history of mental illness, and this slimy, blackmailing detective threatens to let all the world know.
This is what I'm talking about. It pretty well details the nervous breakdown your wife had 7 years ago. It's all here. Everything they did to treat her. The drugs, psychotherapy, shock treatments. Now, I have an open mind about this sort of thing. I say if it works, use it. But most people, Most people are very old-fashioned about the mental stability of their representatives.
At a fundraiser, Laura runs into Perry, and it turns out she was his old flame. He knows her favorite drink and everything.
You remembered.
A gimlet with fresh lime. Yes, I remember.
Well, her husband tries to pay off the blackmailer and simply finds the guy dead. Laura comes to Perry and asks for help. It looks like Glenn is going to need it. Some damning evidence puts him at the scene of the crime.
Wondering where you lost your cigarette case, Mr. Robertson? You know, the gold one with your initials on the front? How about the Pioneer Motel, room 3, not 6 feet from Luke Dixon's body? You're under arrest, Mr. Robertson.
Meanwhile, Paul Drake Jr. chases down the deceased's brother, gets punched in the jaw, runs into an old flame, now as a kid with another on the way, and starts the Mac attack on the police lieutenant in charge of the investigation. Oh, William Catt, getting that screen time, that budget line, and even getting some one-liners from your boss man, Perry.
For a second there, I thought...
Good thing that wasn't her. You forgot to hide.
Well, let's run the math. It seems like whoever hired the blackmailer to steal Laura's secret I Got Electrotherapy file may have retaliated against the blackmailer for trying to bilk Glenn Robertson on the side. So who are the candidates? First, there's Dr. Michaels, the man who prescribed the treatment in the first place. He's a schnook, but he's not the murderer.
Isn't it true you knew if this treatment ever became public, it would ruin her career?
I prescribed it because it was consistent with my diagnosis.
A diagnosis based on your need to manipulate and control the woman you couldn't have. Oh, Dr. Michaels. How could you say you love her? You don't even know the meaning of the word.
Then there's Jennifer Parker, a top aide to Laura, and she's got ulterior motives for her help.
I joined up with Laura 7 years ago because I figured she could help get me where I really wanted to go. And that's to Washington. There's nothing wrong with that. It's natural. You scratch my back, I'll scratch yours.
Symbiosis.
Only game in town.
But she's not guilty either. Then there's Elliot Moore. This guy was in the law firm that hired Laura, but he's been bearing a grudge because he thinks Laura's been handed everything while he's had to work hard. He is the one who hired the blackmailer.
Well, Laura just waltzed into a job that I worked a lifetime to get. I was determined to stop this appointment. That's why I hired Luke, but he crossed me up.
So you killed him?
No. I never stepped foot in that motel room.
But he's not the murderer either. Nope. We have to get a fourth person who knew about Laura's episode. Her personal assistant, Audrey Pratt. What secret does she hide?
She left at 9:45. She told me that she was going to have a private meeting with some backers and that I should cover for her.
Yep. On the night of the murder, Laura stepped out. And on direct examination, Perry uncovers this.
What is that in your right hand, Mrs. Robertson? What is that? People's Exhibit 9, isn't it? It's this cigarette case, isn't it? Your husband didn't have the cigarette case that night, you did. And you dropped it in Luke Dixon's motel room.
Oh no! He clears Glenn only to put Laura in the hot seat. And in the end, Perry and Della are arm in arm. Laura's inside the courtroom after this bittersweet goodbye.
I didn't want things to turn out this way.
I guess Perry's just going to leave exonerating his ex to someone else. Now, let's get trivial, shall we? Each episode in our trivia section, I give you 3 takeaways. A Paul's a subject worth investigating more. Adela is something about a particular actor or actress in the episode or movie. And a Perry is something we learn about our main character. Our Paul this episode concerns the big book of psychology that supposedly authorizes Dr. Michaels to use shock therapy on Laura.
I don't suppose you could give us the name of the medical authority who concurs with your diagnosis.
Yes, I could. Dr. Arlington agrees with me.
Who is Dr. Arlington?
He's a psychiatrist, Mr. Mason. Probably one of the most famous England ever produced.
We're not above a little edification, Doctor. Tell us more.
10 years ago, he published a book called Arlington on Manic Depressives.
Our Paul Jr. prompt. Does the book exist? What does it say regarding electroshock treatment? Is there some other authority that controversially does support this kind of therapy if this book does not? A side Paul Jr. prompt. As far as I can tell, there's no actual NFL game that matches the one described by the football-obsessed hotel clerk.
Montana runs a simple off-tackle rush. Bam, there's a fumble. It's a huge pileup. One by one, the referee pulls off the players. There's a Bronco at the bottom. Bam, Broncos ball. And Mr. John Elway leads his team out onto the field. It's 1st and 10, 27 seconds to go. Bam, Elway hits it down and out on their 48. Stops the clock with 22 seconds to go.
The 49ers did play the Denver Broncos in a 1986 preseason game. And they also played the Denver Broncos in a 1985 Monday Night Football game. Check out that one. It's known as the Snowball Game and featured a late game-winning field goal by the Broncos. Nothing like the action described by the hotel clerk, though. Ardella is none other than Gene Simmons. No, not that Gene Simmons. The one with the kabuki makeup and a long tongue. No, we're talking about the British actress, the one who received the Order of the British Empire next to her name. She was Ophelia in Laurence Olivier's Hamlet, Sarah Brown in Guys and Dolls, Varinia in Spartacus, Fee Cleary in the Thornbirds, Laura Robertson.
He was surprised to see me. I tried to convince him to give me the file, but when he thought he wouldn't get paid, he became ugly.
Simmons was born in 1929 in London to an Olympic gymnast. That was her dad. She started acting at 14. Her breakthrough role, young Estella in David Lean's Great Expectations. 2 years later, 1948, she got an Oscar nomination for playing Ophelia opposite Laurence Olivier in Hamlet. In 1949, she starred alongside Stuart Granger in the comedy Adam and Evelyn, and a year later, married him. When Granger came to Hollywood to star in the movie King Solomon's Mines, Simmons followed, and then things got dicey pretty fast. Howard Hughes owned Simmons' contract and wanted a relationship with her. Of course, Granger and Simmons wouldn't let that happen, and so Hughes wouldn't let Simmons get good parts. Supposedly, she was supposed to get the role that Audrey Hepburn eventually played in Roman Holiday, but Hughes wouldn't let her out of her contract to play the part for Paramount. It took a lawsuit in 1952 to get her free from Hughes's clutches. During this period, she made Angel Face, a movie in 1953 with Otto Preminger as the director, Robert Mitchum, the co-star. According to film critic David Thompson, if she had made only one film, Angel Face, she might now be spoken of with the awe given to Louise Brooks. Now, if you don't know who Brooks is, here's Liza Minnelli on preparing for her role in Cabaret. I went to my father, Vincent, and asked him, what can you tell me about 30s glamour? Should I be emulating Marlene Dietrich? And he said, no, I should study Louise Brooks. which is to say, Gene Simmons apparently would have been in that style of glamour for the 1950s, according to Thompson, if she had just made this movie, Angel Face. All right, over at 20th Century Fox, free of Howard Hughes' clutches, she stars in the biblical epic The Robe. She's a Salvation Army sergeant in Guys and Dolls, playing a role that Grace Kelly turned down, BT Dubs. She's in William Wyler's Big Country in 1958. She's in Home Before Dark that same year, which is a Mervyn LeRoy psychodrama that some critics consider her best performance. 1960, she divorces Stuart Granger. She had one child with Granger, Tracy, and then she starred in Elmer Gantry that same year, which was directed by Richard Brooks, who she then married. Just a side note, Stuart Granger, 16 years older than Gene Simmons. Richard Brooks, 17 years older than Gene Simmons. 1960 was also the year she played opposite Kirk Douglas in Spartacus. And she got another Oscar nod for her role in Richard Brooks' film The Happy Ending in 1969. In the 1980s, she actually won an Emmy for her role as Fiona Fee Cleary, the family matriarch in the series The Thornbirds. Here's a fun note. In 1989, Simmons appeared in a remake of Great Expectations and played Miss Havisham. That's right. She played the adoptive mother of Estella, who she played in a breakthrough role in 1946, over 40 years earlier. 2002 brought her the Order of the British Empire. In 2010, she died from lung cancer at her home at the age of 80. Our Perry for this episode involves our intrepid hero's love life. Of course, here's the snippet we get from his discussion with Laura.
Who would have thought, when we were younger, that I would become a senator and you'd become, well, Perry Mason?
Or that we'd see each other rarely.
Then we hear the question we've all wanted to ask, and it's Laura who asks Della about it.
I've always wanted to ask you, but never had the nerve and the bad manners at the same time. What about you and Perry? I mean...
All right. Perry and I have...
Good. I see you two are getting reacquainted.
Oh, but Perry cuts Della off before she can respond. Well, at least the writers know that we want to know, right? The theme for this episode is love. New Perry Mason movies, same old theme. The word's in the title. Its meanings, multiple. First, there's Perry and Laura, and what might have been. Second, there's the potential rift in the Glenn-Laura relationship. Just look at the way that Glenn glares at Perry anytime he's in a shot with him and Laura and Perry. Glenn always seems super wary of Perry. And of course, Laura committed the murder and let Glenn take the blame. That's going to put some stress on a relationship. Third, there's Dr. Michaels and his thing for Laura, but I guess that's not really love, is it? Tell him, Perry.
How could you say you love her? You don't even know the meaning of the word.
Fourth, there's what might have been between Della and Perry. That's almost the inversion of the Perry-Laura relationship. Laura actually was Perry's girl, but lost him. Della was never Perry's girl. Oh, but she got to stay with him. Oh, love. You're so close, yet so far away. At least Paul Drake Jr. is getting a date, huh? On that note, let's hear a Perry Proverb. Perry's got a lot of smart one-liners in this one. Here's my favorite advice, which he gives to sleazeball Dr. Michaels, wherein we get a preview of Perry's line of attack on this quack later in the episode. He Get some underappreciated marriage advice from the counselor.
You should have married, Emmett. You'd have had a better alibi.
Only Perry would think of marriage as a way to maintain an alibi. It's a sure thing that the traditional reasons for marriage don't often work in Perryland. Perry's given Dr. Michaels advice that's as good as anything he's going to get. Now, let's grab a swig from the water cooler.
No, there is one thing I don't understand.
Go on, Paul.
Each episode in the water cooler, we give you deleted scenes where we imagine the scenes that didn't make the movie's final cut. 8 deleted scenes here from this bursting at the seams 96-minute extravaganza. Number 1, Laura and Della finally hash out why Della and Perry were never an item. This has to happen, right? We all want it. Number 2, a montage of the best and worst moments of Paul Drake Jr.'s relationship with this Colorado woman. Number 3, a scene from Paul Drake Jr.'s date with the lieutenant that ends with Paul getting punched by the waiter. Number 4, election night, where Jennifer Parker loses her district vote in a landslide. Number 5, the next Christmas party at the Robertson Moore Law Firm. It's gonna be icy. Number 6, a montage of other major events missed by the football-obsessed hotel clerk. One's a fire, there's an armed robbery, there's a lunar eclipse, Halley's Comet goes by. This guy's obsessed with Denver Broncos football, can't be bothered with any of it. Number 7, Perry and Della have a heart-to-heart about what really happened with Laura, with Perry revealing that he knows Della's special drink too. And then number 8, we find out who's going to defend Laura, and in a surprise twist, it's prosecutor David Ogden Steers taking a turn as a defense attorney. It's not political after all. All right, in our last Perry movie, The Case of the Shooting Star, we asked about duck burgundy. You remember our defendant ordered it late at night at a shishi restaurant, and it took an hour to make.
What did Mr. McKay say to you?
Well, he ordered a cocktail, and then he ordered dinner, the burgundy duckling.
Your memory is remarkable.
Well, I remember because I told him it would take about a half an hour to prepare.
A half hour? How did Mr. McKay respond?
He said that would be all right and that he was in no hurry.
So we asked, what's involved with this dish? Why eat it late at night? Why the extra half hour? How much would this thing actually cost in the year of our Lord 2021? Well, here's the deal. It takes longer to cook duck than it does turkey or chicken because you want to melt away the fat and make sure the skin is nice and crispy. That takes several hours. That's why the extended time. As for a shishi duck dish, I didn't find any New York City restaurants currently serving duck burgundy. I did check out the restaurant Hu Tong, a fine dining Chinese restaurant in NYC that gets very good reviews. You can get a whole duck and accompanying pancakes for a cool $88. But you are told on the menu that the half duck, which is $44, would feed 2 to 3 people. Now that's a Peking duck, not duck burgundy, but that's what I could find. Some emails from the past month. Nancy, our trivia maven, let me know, per the case of the dubious bridegroom, that Raymond Burr probably did have a fling with Joan Tabor, per some gossip and backstory that concerned Barbara Hale, Joan Tabor's drug habit, and a confirmation that occasionally Raymond Burr did have affairs with women, per Gene Cooper. Also fun, Ed Garvin claims his secretary is old at the age of 50. The actor who portrayed Ed Garvin at the time, 59, 29 years older than the actress who played his wife. Good point, Nancy. Thanks so much. My dad also wrote in about our Perry Mason Season 2 retrospective, The Case of the Sordid Suspects. He writes, quote, the Perry Pod ranking The 30 defendants of season 2 was a virtuoso performance. Thanks, Dad. The methodology was brilliant. The criteria inspired. Given the subjective nature of the process, I fully expected to disagree with your list. For the most part, I found your list compelling. Helen Monteith was higher on mine. Brander Harris was number 1 for me. I have one strong objection. Tick Barton as number 1 is an abomination. The hackneyed portrayal of a jockey who finally decides to pursue someone of his own size was weak. However, based on the criteria you laid out, you have a case for Tick in the top 5. But number 1, come on, man. Well, thanks for the feedback, Dad. Glad I made somebody mad. As always, I'd love feedback about this particular episode of the podcast in general. Was there something about this episode you'd like to comment on or correct? You can email me at theperrypod@gmail.com. All our episodes are available via Spotify, YouTube, and iTunes. A special announcement here. I'm going to go on an indefinite hiatus from the Perry Pod. I'm not sure when I'll be back. I'll be watching seasons 3 through 9 on a loop, though, and if you have any insights on episodes from those seasons, shout out to Tim Cree, who's already sending me notes about season 3. I'll be checking email. I'll evaluate where I'm at in a couple of months and let you know. Thanks to everyone who's listened to the pod. It really means a lot to me. So until then, this is Jonathan Searcy saying so long and keep on walking the Park Avenue beat.